Mr. Matthews, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, Alan. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing good. Looking forward to getting into this chat about Home Part 1. And It's fitting, I suppose, that we're having this conversation as you sit in the shed. Oh, you've got the vinyl and everything. Wow. And is that vinyl available on your site?
In an ideal world, yes, but I have record label issues to deal with to progress further. So I can get represses of all records and all that business.
Okay, so hopefully someday soon people will be able to grab a copy of Home Part 1.
Yes.
And we're going to take a look at life as it was for you during the recording and the changes and challenges that you experienced doing this record, and then what was produced and how you feel about that, and you know, retrospectively looking back at it now, how important it is in the whole Scott Matthews catalogue. But I suppose, take us back first of all to where were the seeds for this album sown, and what was it about making it at home that was so important to you?
It's interesting trying to recollect these memories. I think having a visual, you know, and looking at the tracks, I was like, what was on the album, you know? I'm trying to recollect exactly how I got to that point, and the circumstances. But I think I'm looking at it, tracks like Virginia. Some of these tracks were written certainly in the build up to What the Night Delivers. So, and then you got tracks like The Night Is Young, which is actually quite an old idea. And then I'd got the confidence to do a piano track on What the Night Delivers. So I thought, I'll do one on Home Part 1 too. Of course, which is when 86 Floors from Heaven was born from an image of Evelyn McHale falling from the 86th floor of the Empire State Building. And it's and also I suppose the circumstances were the record label had spent quite a bit of money on What the Night Delivers. This was 2010 kind of time. Mm-hmm. So I think there was we were still riding on the waves of that record because we had a fairly successful campaign with that album. And maybe there was a part of it where just kind of reining things in. Maybe in that time as well, I'd built the Shedio. So around 2009 it was delivered, and then it took me another couple of years to actually get the thing functioning as a room. So I think it started off as being like a demo space, you know, somewhere I could just make the noises and just compile music. But it got to the point quite early on where I thought, actually, these don't sound too bad. I got a few tricks from producer friends as well, and started building up a bit of a collection of recording equipment. So it just naturally progressed that I started to record this stuff, and my drummer Sam Martin came over and we started tracking some drum parts, and it wasn't long before it felt like, we've got the drums to Sunlight. Sounds great, you know. So we kept the template to a degree, and then started building tracks. We're talking 2012, 2013 kind of time, because the record was released 2014. And it felt good. The balance of songs worked well together, and there's a bit of a mixture of old and new. And then, for example, there's a track, The City and the Lie, which was actually recorded on for What the Night Delivers.
Okay.
We kind of done a version for that, but it just didn't seem to work for whatever reason, even though I had a lovely old 1964 Guild Mark I classical, all mahogany. It was a beautiful guitar. But we just didn't feel it fitted with the What the Night Delivers album. So then I came back home and recorded another version. And then tracks like Mona, they happened pretty quickly. I wrote those songs fairly fast in hindsight. Running Wild is another one. Actually, Running Wild was a similar song, tuning-wise and feel as to Calm. It was maybe an old idea from that. So I started to pinpoint the record, and some of the tracks were fairly fresh from the recording time as well. So I'd written The Outsider not long before I recorded it. So all post What the Night Delivers, but as is always the case with every record, you try to mould a group of songs together, whether that be in a similar thought process with the sentiment and the feel for the album, or just lyrically there's probably a theme running through it all. But I think on reflection the songs just do work well together.
Super
proud of this one because it was the first one ever recorded at Shedio.
Yeah, and it has a very organic kind of earthy feel to it as well. And so it sounds like it wasn't necessarily a conscious thought that you were going to, I'm going to make this record at home and that's the way it's going to be. It just kind of came out and just happened very naturally, where it just seemed to work and it seemed to fit. And I always wonder about, I find it fascinating when artists talk about how, particular songs just don't fit on other albums and then they find their place on another album. So do you find that, with songs like that, where they maybe weren't just what was working on the previous album, that you like them so much that you go, do you know what, I'm going to work to try and make it fit into this new album, or I'm going to look to build a new album around a similar theme as to what's flowing through this particular track?
You're right, yeah, exactly that. It's some songs, if you have the luxury to stockpile a few songs, well then it's that's an ideal scenario, because maybe in the past it was like elsewhere. Well, that's the songs I've got. That's kind of all I've got, really.
Yeah.
So that's going to make the album. But yeah, there's the more you make, there's an element of luxury where you can put that song somewhere, and give it its own little place where you feel it's strong enough to warrant its own place somewhere. But I think maybe Virginia maybe set the tone for the record, being the first track on the album as well. Virginia was I'd got the very early beginnings of it before I played a festival in the Isle of Man, I think it was, and I played it to my friend Bruno Cavallic, famous Bruno Maurice, and Bruno played it to Bruno, and he said, "Oh, what's this song called?" I'm thinking something like Virginia. Oh, great. So then it began from that point, and that's certainly. I think before, just digressing there, I had a new guitar. It was a Maton Classical, which is my favourite guitar of all time now, and I played Virginia on that guitar, and then that guitar was actually informing most of the record, because looking back, it's on Mona, it's on The City and the Lie as well, and Let's Get You Home. So it's quite an integral instrument for that record. So sometimes an instrument comes along, and just makes the noise. It's like this old guitar as well, the old Guild. I mean, I wrote most of What the Night Delivers on this, an old 70s Guild, and so I think the instrument certainly inspires the move, the next move you make. I suppose being a guitarist as well, I always have that as my kind of starting point. Sometimes it can be, it's very rarely a piano thing, but certainly the instrument and the vibe that gives off and what I'm into as a player, that will influence the type of music I make for that record as well. So that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah,
I've got a couple of new ones even now, which are influencing the next record. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Crazy.
Do you find that the guitars that you would pick up, there would be a connection to it, or is it just the tone of particular instruments that really resonate with you? Like, has there ever been a case where you've just picked up an instrument and it just felt right before you even strummed it? Yeah,
most of the time. That's what happened with What the Night Delivers. I had a lovely Gibson, 1951 Gibson LG2, and I used that on Myself Again. But Myself Again was another one of those tracks. It waited so long to find the right record. Myself Again was written in 2001, 2002, something like that.
Wow.
So that waited a long time. We tried it on Elsewhere, didn't fit with those songs. Worked perfectly with John Cotton and What the Night Delivers. So I'm taking all these experiences and this information that's informing the albums and trying to put it to good use for the next one. I think as well, the cover up maybe as well. I mean, it was a fairly. Sally took the cover, and we just we didn't take long on, like maybe 2 hours or something in the afternoon, just to kind of get some new press shots going, and we ended up sticking with this one. I mean, it's probably something Island Records would have preferred, having a face on the front. Yeah. I was never like, oh, okay, that's not really for me. But I think it was maybe a statement as well, perhaps, as well. Home Part 1, the first record at home, the DIY boutique approach of making records, which has been done for decades, and I think about those early Elliott Smith albums, still some of my favourite albums. I hear Sufjan Stevens' process as well, and hear I can hear the buzzing of machines in the background as well. The very much the lo-fi thing, and it's got a sepia tone as well. The record has, because it's kind of dusty. I'm using ribbon microphones, so there's not too much top end. The record actually is quite caged on the top end, so it doesn't really breathe that much. It's very much. We used some old microphones. It was just myself recording it, and it ended up having a bit of a lo-fi tinge, But there's little flurries of where it does kind of sparkle, like there's an end section of Virginia where the vocals just kind of hover over the top of the music, and it's those little points that give that record a bit more of a shape as well. But it's not a very sparkly record. It's quite dusty as an album.
It's interesting you say. Yeah, it's interesting you say that now. As I think about each of your albums, I don't know whether the cover art not defines it, but influences my sensation of the whole album as a listener. But I think it's something that you guys have hit spot on quite a bit. Like What the Night Delivers is definitely a black and white album, and Home Part 1 is definitely a sepia kind of album. It's interesting that you say that. And when I think about the songs on Home Part 1, like there's definitely for me a lovely feeling starting with Virginia and working its way through. And I love those first three songs. Like I love the way Virginia goes into The Outsider, into Sunlight, and then lyrically The City and the Lie is just so powerful. And you have that, and then all of a sudden you're the Night is Young is like a lovely little soft interlude into the power of 86 Floors, which, like, I'm there, like I've known that photograph for a long time, and you captured the essence of that, and all of a sudden she had a story, Now, she had a story, but it was there, and you could you're walking with her through the whole process, and I think that then you kind of move into the back end, and it's like this freedom just exists, with Mona and Running Wild, and Let's Get You Home. It's kind of like, right, come on, time to come inside and stop your playing, let's go. And it's such a lovely lovely experience.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like I said, to revisit the record, it's I can pinpoint the time of feeling really good about just being in this place of, doing it yourself and having the confidence to do it as well, because there's a lot of pressure to deliver something, especially, working with John Cotton again for album 3, which maybe, still, I think, I can't remember if it was the case, but I'd finished Home Part 1, and I think the early murmurings were, still prefer What the Night Delivers from a few people. And that was the pressure sonically to deliver something as good as John Cotton, which was an impossible task, because John and his equipment and his ear for music and his production values were a different kind of level. There's many reasons I'm proud about this record, but I think essentially it's the way the songs came together and how the songs sit as a little family. But also just doing it myself, and the organic nature to it. That was certainly, that's what made it, I think. And I had fun, from my experiences with session players, on the past records. But this was my chance to be the producer. No, I was never into that tag word, it's my record, my way, my thing. Don't touch it, It's like, no, actually, let's just serve these songs and let's just make sure the songs flee the nest as they should in my eyes at that time. Which is, of course, why getting Danny involved again for cello on numerous parts, and then getting my friends to play horn stuff. Ray Butcher was on the trumpet. We got some fantastic outtake material from those sessions, just having a bit of fun, jamming. But I was quite close to including that stuff on the record, but I thought it might have just deterred from the spirit of the music. And then my buddy Matt Taylor again on some flutes for was it Dear Angel? I can't remember if flutes on Dear Angel. can't remember. The Clearing, that was it. Yeah, the instrumental. Yeah, flute stuff. So I enjoyed literally that corner of the room there in the shed was the session room where everything was set up. I organised the sessions for everyone, and we had fun just to come up with the parts together. And I really enjoyed it. It's great. Such a great experience to have the confidence to work with somebody I knew, but to also relay what I wanted for that song. And there's a nice harmony working with people where usually in the past it would be John Cotton or John Leckie or Gavin Monaghan in this producer's chair and communicating, getting the dialogue with the performers, and maybe my lack of theory and knowledge with reading music was maybe a disability to kind of communicate what I wanted. So yeah, it just came together really organically because we just talked about melodies and what we wanted, and Danny Keane most of the time, is always on the money. Danny's fantastic. I had a few technical nightmares as well with thinking, well, I've only got limited microphones, maybe 3 or 4 microphones in my collection. So I'm thinking, okay, Danny Keane's arriving today. How am I going to record Danny Keane and that wonderful cello from 1861, 1862? So Danny's like, yeah. Danny, you got any mics? Yeah, I'll bring one. Yeah. So anyway, turns up in his old Volvo, his old 80s Volvo, beaten, rusty and everything. And then he's got something hidden in this towel on the passenger seat. And he opens the towel, and it's basically a legendary Coles 4038 microphone, which is an industry standard microphone, very expensive, wrapped in a towel. Classic Danny Keane. So problem was solved, and we got into my shed, had a cup of tea, and then we recorded Danny's parts, and instantly it was like, whoa, that is just stunning. So almost I was just sitting here going, Danny, just carry on, mate. That sounds fantastic. And we had fun, but we've got some outtake material which would hopefully maybe be included with like some kind of deluxe version of the repress, maybe, which would be quite nice to delve into.
Yeah, because 10 years is going to come. It's going to be a 10-year anniversary very quickly.
Yeah, it is, man. Yeah,
that's mad.
It's bonkers.
Before we went live, we were just talking about time and how we can lose days, and certainly during the pandemic, that certainly was the case for a lot of people. Did you find that you experienced pressure being the producer, in inverted commas, of this, or was it just, did you have the flexibility to be able to just work with people and kind of have a bit of give and take? Like, were you experiencing pressure from the record company?
Not so much, I think, because we were still in the phase of post-Island Records termination, and maybe content with the trajectory of the way things had gone from that point. So What the Night Delivers was actually a successful campaign. We've got the Nick Drake tribute concert to kind of work with that as well, which was brilliant, great exposure. So to bring out What the Night Delivers at the same time, we had some good energy around the album and the campaign. So this one was almost like a low-cost record, so that I didn't feel that pressure as such as well. But also, you make an album and then you understand how it works when it's out of your control as well. So you make the record and then everyone chooses the single. Oh, okay, we need a single edit, all that kind of business. But this was also proving to be, I wasn't aware of this at the time, but it was also a transitional phase behind the scenes, because management and record label was, I think maybe it come to a natural closure as well, possibly. And that influenced the next kind of phase. But so, of course, this being the last campaign essentially with San Remo Records, it was like, okay, we have to put out a single, do the usual, try and get some good press around the album and tour it. So that was, we had some nice experiences on reflection with that campaign. But we got the big PR lady, Barbara Sharon. So we've done the whole London meeting, and it's at that point that I met a woman called Sarah Silver, who was a good friend of Robert Plant, and she ended up being my manager. So it was a transitional phase as well as trying to make this record breathe and and let it kind of blossom in its way. And maybe at some point things derailed a little bit. We put out Sunlight as a single, which I thought was quite nice. I think I actually prefer the edited version of Sunlight these days than the album version. I'd be interested to get everyone's comments on Patreon about that one. Which one do you prefer, the edit or the full album, full length, which has got like an extra verse? And then I think we put out Mona as a single. Yeah, we did Mona. I think that was it. It wasn't Virginia, The Outsider, Not the Clearing, City in the Light, Night is Young. I think it was a two single release, that one. And then we done an official video for 86 Floors from Heaven, which was from a guy called Lukas Pitlik, a Polish guy. A fantastic video that proved to be.
Yeah.
And again, he just echoed the in a visual sense, really true to the music. And obviously having a great backstory there with Evelyn McHale. So, but my experiences was one of maybe fondness for the time, perhaps, and but very much aware on the horizon was change. Yeah.
And we maybe consciously or subconsciously setting a platform with this record for where this transition was going to take you, where even if there wasn't another record label knocking down the door to say, or that you could get an agreement with, and that you were saying, well, look, let's try this out and I'll see if it's sustainable anyway to do this by myself.
Yeah, it was going to be some kind of barometer, wasn't it? Doing it myself. And because say we finished the Campaign to Home Part 1 and feeling positive that I could make something at home and make a record with it, because as is always the case when anyone that works at home, having the discipline and the end goal in sight, because of the distractions and you've got to focus. So I was aware of the timelines that had gone previous, from making a record and you've got to get it mixed and mastered, and then there's the manufacturing time as well. So I was working to a deadline and trying to give myself a good injection of energy every day to make it. But then in a creative sense, you do get the stumbling block. So you've got all the great intentions in the world, but then you can just sit there some days and go, man, it's not working today. What's going on? Vocally, maybe just off the charts or something, or it's just not working. Or you're stuck on lyrics maybe as well from a writing perspective. But it gives me a good sense of how I need to operate. But maybe that's when the pressure comes in as well, then, because you have to deliver something and have something to show for the time, which can be quite challenging because sometimes you don't get anything to show for it. But it's that from that point, 2014 onwards, I'd like to think it's actually been pretty good. I think I've been my most prolific, strangely, since that record.
Yeah, it's interesting. And what do you think that's down to? Is it just a maturity side of things, and taking your learning, or is there something else there, do you think?
I think it's kind of getting a grasp on a bit of a formula for working on my own, maybe. Because, just because you see, most of the times it was like, seeing people go to work, and like, if I went to go and get a pint of milk or something in the morning, say, and I'd be driving back home and looking up this constant queue of traffic going towards the centre of the town, and then, thinking, man, I'm so lucky to just not be that one in the queue there, and just think, okay, let's get back, let's do what I have to do and make something happen, which involves obviously just switching your mind off from things to a degree and trying to focus on being a songwriter as a profession, which is still can't quite grasp those two things in the same sentence, because it is just a very personal thing that you have to kind of put into the world. So it's there's pressure from it, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to make the moves and to make a song exist and to put it out as a record, and so that time still felt very fresh, but it serves me in good stead, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, and it definitely, I suppose let's kind of dig into it a little bit now. Like, you know, lyrically, I think this album is exceptionally strong, but also there's a lovely counterbalance with some of the lighter musical moments as well. But like I said earlier on, for me, the lyrics in The City and the Lie are just so powerful. Where the inspiration come from that one?
Man.
If I'm going to be just a bit, you know, selfish
You know
here
what?
when I'm talking about
Well, I need to
myself.
have. I forgot the lyrics, so we'll have to just go through them together. I think.
That's
I mean,
absolutely fine with me.
because I mean, I have. If anyone obviously notices, but I have the lyrics on stage as well. I just forget. And worryingly, even with my glasses on, I can't see the lyrics anymore. So I'm in absolute trouble here. But in fairness, though, it is on a really busy background there.
Yeah.
So I can't see very well. Oh, that's bad. I think I like these kind of songs, Sit in the Lie, where it's a bit of a... There's almost like a French lilt to them.
Yes,
you know?
absolutely.
Almost like as the day passes. There's that kind of charm. You know, city man lives under a clock. I think it was initially the guy... What's the famous painting with the guy with the bowler hat and the apple?
I know the one. I don't know the name of it though.
Eyes on the hands in his race for the top, but he's barely afloat in the wreck of his disaster. I was coming up with these lines that made me go, wow, that's really cool. I like that. It was a bit more playful. I was a bit I think What the Night Delivers maybe set the tone for... I was getting into Dylan Thomas at the time, and his use of rhythm, of words, and this record was a continuation of that, I think, and that song was definitely that as well. Man, I can't actually read the words. What's going on?
But you know,
now it's time for the iPhone as well.
While you're doing that, like it actually resonates quite well with what you were saying about being that person driving home with the milk and seeing the queues of traffic of people going into the city.
Yeah.
And, you know,
The
being
pressure.
in a position... Yeah. And having to perform. And it's a different performance, but it is a performance in some ways. And it's almost like the song is adding a recognition to that, or naming that performance where the real person underneath may not be living the life that they live. And, you know, like for me personally, like I have a lot of issues with the education system and all that kind of stuff, where it kind of, I believe it works for a small percentage of the population, and it doesn't allow the creative person it doesn't foster the creative person as well as it could do. But yet people, because of the pursuit of money equals happiness, they build up this exterior that just is so untrue to their absolute soul and what they're here for, what their purpose is on the planet. And
That's it, yeah.
and I think you name that so well in the lyrics within that song.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on it, actually. Yeah, it is. I mean, just you saying that there. There's the line when he says, "But he makes that he's way more important than you."
Yeah.
And it's like this. He makes that way more. I can't read the words. Yet the clothes that he wears are all threadbare and used, but he still likes to think he can reach higher than you. And it's like, maybe, there was this part of me was kind of building this picture of this character, you know.
Yeah. And even, like, I'm sure you came across many people from when you got swept into the whole music industry who were like that.
But yeah, you know what, actually, very much because of my London trips, which are very frequent, and thinking I was so glad to get on the train home.
Yeah.
You know, and that in a nutshell. That's certainly part of my thinking there. You know, and then he goes, "There's no makeup that conceals all the true lines that reveal who you are. There's no faking from anyone. So I wonder how the face you wear can hide who you are. What's it? You project a face of happiness because your real mask is barred. And the only place to go where you can let down your guard is your sunken retreat round the back of a street where we act out our lives. I mean,
honestly,
I'm
man,
happy with that.
like, I'm getting goosebumps just listening to you say the words. Never mind, listen to the flow of the song.
Do you think Leonard Cohen would enjoy that? I think he would, man.
He
I'm
definitely
just kind of
would.
bigging myself up there. That was not one of those moments, but I can look back. I don't play the song very often as well, but like reading the lyrics, I kind of get back into my old thought process of that time where I was as a writer as well. And I've always been one of those where I think I certainly thrive lyrically when I'm writing a character song,
Yeah.
you know. But then, without maybe realising it, you can inject a lot of that character, yourself in that character. And maybe the kind of marriage of the first and third person perspective is kind of ends up with something maybe pretty unique to me. But yeah, it's that song was maybe again one of those songs that didn't work with the theme of what the night delivers. Possibly it could have done, but it just didn't feel right. But this record, Home Part 1, it certainly, the synergy was strong with the rest of the material. And also, yeah, there's the songs. I was tapping into a little bit of Greek mythology at some point, with the help of Sally as well, and Sally was into that kind of thing. And my buddy Mick Burrows, he gave me a Life annual for Christmas from the 70s. And of course, hey Scott, turn to page 172 of this book. Okay. Open the big book, this big annual. And there was this dramatic photo of Evelyn McHale on the roof of a car. Whoa. Mind blowing. But also change as well. The Night is Young, definitely was one of those. I think I just started with an A major 7. Oh. What's going on? The first lyric was have you ever wondered what it would be like to bury your life and start over again? All relating to home, We've got a very narrow letterbox, posting our keys through the narrow letterbox. The night is young, but we're getting older as night moves fast. Only having a cat at the time. The cat is sleeping unaware in the back of the car. My baby believes we're right to leave it all behind. But saying goodbye proves harder every time. And then the fears for everybody else. All we packed were prayers for the savior of our loved ones. We never figured we'd need much more. And then the out of control ivy in the front garden. The ivy climbs and holds on to dear life. Our senses fry as the heat of the moment burns our eyes. The sounds unclear and the smell of home recedes into the unknown. We disappear. I look at your anxious smile and kiss you on the lips as we drive into the mist. 'Cause nothing now can change the way we feel as the moon burns hard. For every doubt in a way that beats an optimist's heart. Dreams are never content in the dark. Ooh. And it was
Magic.
born. The Night is Young. And it's one song I'm really proud of, and I don't play it that often. But I was at one point going to call the album An Optimist's Heart.
Really?
And but then the way the record was formed, and it was like, nah, it's home. that's in essence where this record's come from. But yeah, I like that one.
But yeah, a lot of the lyrics seem to point to you planting your feet almost, you know, in a physical and a metaphorical way, where it's, you know, this is me and I'm getting my foundation set. And what was it that got, say, The Clearing onto the record as an instrumental track?
And that was probably it was the beginnings actually of a song for the next record, Home Part 2, Stay in Bed. So it's the same tuning, and also my little realisation that I could be Ennio Morricone for a
of course
window. Thinking, okay, let's try something a bit more widescreen, you know, a bit more cinematic. I would have loved to have heard The Clearing in somewhere like, say, I don't know, Olympic with John Leckie at the helm, string quartet, some horns, big live room, you know, someone on the timpani drum. You know, it could be dramatic beyond all belief, you know. So that was my little version of that idea. I've never done an instrumental as such, you know. I guess they all start as instrumentals, but that just felt like I didn't need to add anything to it. The Clearing, and I was actually in Inverness 2 weeks ago. Fantastic, as you can imagine, a beautiful drive through Scotland and the hills and the mountains, and perfect. And I checked on it Instagram. Somebody had posted like a reels footage of them, or those guys as well, also driving through Scotland in the same week, and they'd had The Clearing on as their kind of music soundtrack to it. And it's like, wow, that really works. And just reminded me that I should do more of that kind of thing, because it's I've always enjoyed the moments when I don't have to kind of write some words to it. Just like the idea of letting music just do its thing. But yeah, maybe I would like to do more of that kind of thing at some point. And I think it's an interesting piece musically as well. I mean, I couldn't explain what I did in terms of chords and shifts in movements. But I always saw every section of the song as kind of some way of building, almost like Love, you know, the band Love from the 60s. Mm-hmm. They had that leanings of that kind of sound, and I think I had that in my head as well. You know, they're very much almost, and as well maybe some kind of Mike Oldfield thing going on. You know, with the textural things and the 12 strings kind of wide pan, and I think instrumentation wise, I think it was a bit different for me. And obviously utilising the guys I mentioned, Ray Butcher and Matt Taylor on the flute. Yeah, but it's glorious. We've got, again, I'd like to think I could put out some of the outtake material, because there's some pretty interesting variations of things which I'd like people to hear at some point as well.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, as long as the hard drive hasn't fried.
Fingers crossed. Get it on the cloud. Get it on the cloud.
That's it, man. That's it.
And when you opened page 172 and saw the photograph of Evelyn, when did you get the inspiration to write that? Was it an immediate thing, or was it, there's a story here behind the actual photograph rather than just the photograph?
I think it might have been my friend Mick, actually, even on the book itself. I think he might have even said, yeah, turn to page 172. There's a great song in this. Okay. And yeah, kind of got the cogs working, got the WD-40, you know, and yeah, obviously, I don't know if you can see me over there, but I think I had this quite early on as well. I had a little passage of music which was doing. My intro. That's kind of all I had, and then had this change, the shift of passage, and then I started singing something about Empire Skies or something, and the song came together pretty quickly, because I think that song was building anyway. I had my piano back down in the house for a while, and I was playing piano every day, and of course this image came along, this super beyond profound image in holding the pearl necklace, and then you try to start to find the backstory of it all as well, and she neatly folds away her dreams and hopes, which was like essentially a suicide note in a handbag, and beyond overwhelming, really. It was it's an unbelievable story, but there's not much information. Of course, reports from the time and that, and it's very small segments of interviews with family members and things. We're talking the 40s. This was in New York. So I was just trying to build up a picture of this character, and but not maybe obviously very specifically about something, but it also still there's an openness to the lyric, which I'd like to think can still relate as well. I don't mind that some songs are about a specific thing. That's part of its strength. But I've always liked to keep the song open, and so you can inject it into your world, and then it's got its own meanings. That's where the magic is.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mona seems to have cemented itself in the...
One of your favourites?
Yes, it is. It is. It's one of my favourites, yeah. But, it comes out regularly at shows, and people seem to respond to it. And now, this is one of those moments where if we were sitting in a room, you might give me a slap. But it seems like a relatively simple song.
It is, yeah.
But it's so beautiful as well.
Yeah, that's the best stuff is the simple stuff, and it's the best stuff always feels like it's always been there, because you think this is easy. It's not easy, but it's like there's a simplicity to it. I mean, the chords are simple for a start. I mean, all I'm doing is just dropping the first E to a D, and just so it's quite a simple riff as well. But again, character stories. It's so I had this idea. We just backtrack very slightly. Up on the hill off Elsewhere was the ending song of a trilogy, trio of songs about a character, this couple. And, they've done a house on the hill, and Mona is the beginning of the story.
Okay.
So I'm yet to write the middle song. So I've gone really backwards on all this. Yeah, but I had the lyric of walk by the house every noon. She's taken the long way, 'cause every step is too soon. And I wish she'd stay here, Mona. Lasso the moon, dear, pull it closer. Lasso the moon, being Wonderful Life, of course. You want the moon, Mary? I'll give you the moon. So there's all kinds of things working in the songs always. The picture you build. She's taken the long way. The long way because every step is too soon. And I mean that one, maybe it says a lot about that song that it's always in the set list. I enjoy playing it as well. And I think it's probably one of my favourite ones I've ever written. It feels complete in a lyrical sense as well. I mean, I've added a few more bits to it over the last few years, but essentially lyrically it's the same. What's that? What else I'll go? Every step is too soon. I think I had that first, I wish you'd stay here, Mona. That's for the moon, dear. Pull it closer. Trespassing free on the hill. I'll marry you someday, dressed in white on a hill. Why won't you stay here, Mona? Gamble your life here, Mona. It started with something worth loving, but the endings I had like a warning. So what of you in the story? 'Cause I'll do whatever it takes. I'll bend every rule till it breaks. So on and so on.
Amazing.
But it's I think what sums up the song maybe is the whole bird in the cage thing.
Mm.
You know, and the need for, like, you know, is this it? You know, this house on the hill, is this us forever? And maybe it wasn't, you know. She felt the dream was bigger or something. And but again, that's maybe the charm for me in songs, is we can all kind of paint our own pictures of something.
Yeah.
But it can come from that song as this. It's kind of been approached from different angles. You know, going back to the city and the lie with the painting, the guy with the bowler hat and the apple. Mona as well. There's another painting I can't think of the name of. Maybe when we do this goes out on Patreon, we'll I'll put some little kind of images with it as well that inspired the songs. And yeah, It's a Wonderful Life. I had that in my mind singing that song as well. But yeah, again, in a melodic sense, just started singing, I wish you'd stay here, Mona. The name Mona just came out. It sounded good with the song. And yeah, that's how it works, you know. And then, unless 86 Floors comes along and you write about a specific photo. But no, it's always been about just trying to put the songs together as a record and make them work together. Keep the spirit the same.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's nice to not have Sally going, who the hell is Mona?
Yeah, there's that as well. Yeah, there's a lot of that balance is strong on that record, and I can hear myself. There's a playful element as well, in some of the ideas. I mean, I'm like, should give myself a little pat on the back as well from the perspective of recording it, because it wasn't easy. You know, I had no idea how to record a drum kit for a start. You know, and had to record a trumpet, had to record flautist and cello, and a stereo pair on a piano, microphones. You know, I learned so much on that record. Yeah. That I can look back on it and think, no, you did okay on that one. And like there's a little picture. I don't know if you can make it on this photo actually. If I can just get rid of the ultra exposed. So this little, oh, there it is. This little house here, I can't bring point to it. It's a little kind of birdhouse that we took a photo of, which I think is pretty much rotted away. But it's oh, and actually as well, obviously that photo in itself says a lot. I mean, the shed is actually quite clean. I mean, if I showed you a photo of the area at this moment in time, 2022, it's a bit of a bomb site there. So yeah, it's.
I think even the images that you used are very rootsy and, you know, stripped back and, you know, away from the clutteredness of a studio. And, you know, okay, you know, we can look behind you right now and see, you know, lots of different instruments and stuff like that, but it just it has always struck me as a New Beginning album, but at the same time, you know, it's so triumphant in the fact that it is so successful that you did this, you know, essentially by yourself, having had the success of What the Night Delivers, and it being such a strong record that people really resonated with, but it doesn't sound from talking to you like it felt like a lot of pressure or a gamble or anything like that. It was just the next evolution, which is,
Yeah.
you can really get that sense when you listen to it.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's, again, maybe looking back at the time, we finished, What the Night Delivers was recorded and finished in 2010. And I'd finished this record, Home Part 1, in 2013. And it was released 2014. So I'd certainly spent a bit of time getting to that point of making the record and understanding. So I can look back now and think, well, actually, I probably spent a bit too long on just trying to understand how I got there, but maybe there's a lot for me to take in as well, because I had to learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
Lots of phone calls to engineer friends, for example, and technical things, and maybe the kind of doubt that was kicking in of whether this holds up to anything I've done previously as well. Because there was an element of being spoiled on the first 3 albums. I mean, I didn't think for a second I'd be going to Olympic Studios.
Yeah.
As you walk in, it's like a Studio 2's down there. Studio 1 is up right in front of me, where Hendrix and the Stones recorded, and everybody else. So I'd got the reference points for me were actually quite whoa, how can I deal with that? Can my stuff stand up? But I was aware also as well that I couldn't do that. So let's make it, the images aren't the best quality. The audio isn't the best quality. But maybe that's probably what helps the organic feel of the record and gives it its charm. Because I can hear me messing with an instrument or a microphone combination with a preamp and thinking, oh, that's a really nice colour that is. Yeah, so the colours that I was building was actually influencing the complete picture. And and it sits harmoniously with all the records now. I can look back on that one and really pinpoint the time with a smile.
And I think that's the thing, it's not a case of you can ring somebody and go, what's the combination for this? And they go A plus B equals C, and you go, oh, thanks very much. And 30 seconds later, you're doing A plus B equals C. That's just not how it works. So I could imagine there's a lot of experimentation and playing around with things and different, mics and setups to get what you imagined it could be, to actually having it on record as well. So, let's not criticize ourselves too much, Scott. You did a good job.
Well, I think as well, I mean, obviously this was the year as well when I was just finally just tuning into, okay, let's get the record on LP. Because previous to that, Island Records never released Passing Stranger or Elsewhere on LP. And What the Night Delivers, I don't think it was as trendy as it, I mean, 2010, CDs were still selling. LP was still a very niche thing. So I was certainly not in that headspace of making records, getting my albums to be mastered for LP format, which is the way it should be. So there's me, Home Part 1, I've made like an album that's over 50 minutes. Tony Visconti said something like, the optimum per side for LP is 18 minutes, which explains why all records in the 60s and 70s, whatever, all the best records were shorter albums, because they wrote the songs and the track sequencing was for an LP format. So I was into that side of things suddenly, and that which explains why it's the first record of mine that was out on vinyl. Yeah, I'm still on the fence whether it translated very well, because it was never mastered properly for LP. It was all new to us. But I think it sounds good. But I know the repress will be top notch. Yeah, because I'm at the helm and I know what I'm doing, he says.
With full confidence.
Yeah.
And is there any other elements, as we kind of come to a bit of a natural close on this one, that were pertinent during this process, or looking back now? Is there any songs that really kind of, that we haven't touched on, that you can kind of go, this was really important for me, or this was an interesting writing process for me on any of the other songs?
Yeah, it's a good question, mate. I think I can probably look. It just seems this is one of those records again that just I don't think there was really an anchor point song. You know, it was felt like it was the songs I was writing at the time, but also the little bit of a luxury of holding something back. The city and the light being an example. Maybe Let's Get You Home, I think. I recorded that in the hallway, very simply as well. And I think lyrically it's got a flow, and I can still read the lyrics, and I know it means a lot to people. That one.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be the fire when your heart has no desire, taking all of the heat to save you, melting. Here it goes again. I like the flow of this one. Maybe this song sums up the spirit of the album some way. I'll be the fire when your heart has no desire, taking all of the heat to save you, melting in your sleep. And all that you break, I'll be mending when you wake, putting right what is wrong, singing you my little song to soothe your ears. There's always something to break when the fight still wants to take on another round. Unsatisfied, you're out for the count, coaxing you up for more. When you feel safer on the floor, it trips you up to pull you down, chews you up to spit you out. Oh, come, let's get you home, where my love can soothe your bones. You can come round from seeing stars in my arms. Nice way to close the album as well, I think.
Yeah. And what is it that finishes it? Is it like a door closing or something? Or?
That's a good question, man.
I'm curious. I've always wondered, what is that? What is it?
I know my cat Pixie, she finishes one of the albums. Yeah, it might be Home Part 2. Ooh, that's a good question. That's one for the pub quiz, isn't it, mate?
That is one for the pub quiz. The Patreon pub quiz.
Yeah. Hey, we should do some kind of quiz at some point. If there's a way we can do like a live quiz, that'd be great.
Yeah. There's definitely ways you can do live quizzes.
Yes. Hey, should we do one? Let's do one.
Let's do one. I think that's
Christmas quiz.
Perfect. And it's all questions about all your albums, and people got to find the answers.
Fantastic.
We do a little like treasure hunt and everything, where you drop little Easter eggs and people can kind of go, oh, I'll hold on to that now for the Christmas quiz. Like,
that's it, man. Yeah, this is good. Right, we'll talk about this afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Scott, Home Part 1, your first venture into writing and recording everything for yourself, and it was an absolute triumph, an album. Again, one of my favourites, and one that I go back to an awful lot to listen to. So congratulations, and we look forward to the deluxe 10-year, hopefully, maybe 11 or 12 years, depending on how the negotiation goes. But yeah, we look forward to moving into Home Part 2.
Yeah, it gets interesting. Yeah. But yeah, it was always great to hear your passion, Alan, for the music, and I like the fact that these chats are natural and just flow really well.
Yeah, well, I hope I represent the average fan, because that's what I am.
Yeah, brilliant. Good stuff.
All right, well, until next time, Scott, look after yourself.
You too. See you, Patreon people. Lots of love.